Now to Perth, where lives and homes remain under threat, with strong winds continuing to pose a real risk to firefighting efforts in the Perth Hills. Ashley Gillen is with me now live. And Ash, more homes have been lost as well, sadly.
Yeah, Kieran, we learned another 10 homes have been lost, so now it's 81 homes that have been razed by this Wooroloo fire in the Perth Hills. These are homes lost on Monday night that have just been added to the tally and confirmed as lost because they've now been able to get into the fireground and see what's left. Thankfully, no homes were lost overnight last night. That had been a real fear that last night was going to be another terrible night, in particular this Shady Hills housing estate, which really yesterday looked like it was in serious trouble, was saved by the efforts of firefighters. Here's some of what the Fire Commissioner had to say about the threat.
We've got hopefully a reasonably set southeasterly direction in the wind. It will be affected by the valleys that exist through the Avon Valley there, which caused us some issues last night with funneling of the winds into different directions, and was one of the key drivers around the breakout we had around Avon Ridge. So we'll keep monitoring that. Everybody can see outside how strong the wind is, and that's the challenge for today, tonight and tomorrow.
Yeah, those winds are so strong, Kieran, that the fixed-wing aircraft haven't been able to get up and fly to help with those firefighting efforts today, which is a blow to their efforts. But look, it is one of those developing situations. We'll, of course, keep our viewers updated as to how things go, because it still is, a very tenuous and dangerous situation.
It is indeed. And on a more promising front for WA, another day of 0 cases.
Yes, it's 4 days in a row now. It's looking like Perth will be ending its lockdown tomorrow as planned at 6 p.m. Mark McGowan, the Premier, has said that he does expect that means schools will be back on Monday. He's going to be advising as to what other restrictions like mask wearing and gathering limits may then remain in place. That'll be happening either tonight or tomorrow morning. We'll learn exactly what sort of situation we'll be facing here in Perth in terms of restrictions. It is particularly good news that we learned at the news conference today that the security guards' close contacts have all been retested, and again they've all found to be negative. Even his housemates, which seems remarkable, doesn't it, that housemates living in such close quarters with someone with this UK variant, which as we know is hugely contagious. At this point anyway, they haven't got it. They are continuing to be tested regularly. They are in hotel quarantine anyway for the next 14 days. For people in the community who did go to some of the places where this security guard went to, and there's a list of about 18 of them, the advice is that if you've had a test, it's time to go and get retested if you are getting any symptoms, because of course there is this incubation period to be aware of that means that it could take some days for a positive test to show up. So look, all the signs looking really good, but there is this caveat on it that we could have a few more days before something actually does spring up in terms of a positive test result. As Gab alluded to earlier, currently anyone arriving from Victoria in WA needs to self-isolate for 14 days. It was due to be lifted today. Mark McGowan's balked on that though, considering this hotel quarantine worker case in Victoria. The WA government saying it isn't ready to fling open the borders to Victorians just yet. Have a listen.
Given the evolving situation in Victoria, we have now made a decision to pause our planned border control transition with Victoria for now. Victoria was due to move to the very low risk category from midnight tonight, but that has now been put on hold, and we will assess the situation over coming days. This means travellers from Victoria will still need to self-quarantine for 14 days and undergo a day 11 test. It is possible that Victoria may need to go back to the medium risk category.
Kieran, I was listening to your discussion with Andrew about what we're doing about hotel quarantine, this idea that's being pitched that we should be setting up purpose facilities for quarantining in rural, regional parts of the country. We don't usually often hear from the Director General of WA Health at Mark McGowan's news conferences, but he was there today and he was addressing these ideas, and he was saying that in a place like Western Australia, he would find it really difficult to get people out into rural and regional areas and have enough medical help there in some of these parts of the state ready to spring into action. He sort of made the point that the hospital systems, the health systems that are set up in those sort of rural and regional areas around this state wouldn't really be ready to jump to action when it came to dealing with a potential influx of COVID cases. And he said there'd have to be a lot of work done to get the medical help up to scratch. Also interesting to hear, he was calling for much more nationally consistent advice as to how this virus is being controlled better going forward within hotel quarantine. He was wanting to hear that from the federal health authorities. It sounds like we might hear a bit more about that tomorrow after National Cabinet meets.
Ash, thank you for that. We'll talk to you soon.